Hi there. Hi there.
Hey, Will.
Thank you. Welcome. I hope none of you who are here tonight were left out in the snow or the ice last week. I apologize. I could only let so many people know, and not everyone found out. I want to thank our sponsors for the lecture series. We've got the College of the Environment and Life Sciences, College of Arts and Sciences. We've got the Rhode Island chapter of the American Society of Landscape Architects, and Landscape Forums are helping to make this possible. For things that you are eating and drinking from outside, we have students to thank for making that possible. Olivia, Emma, Alexandra, and Emily have their food out there, and it doesn't happen without student help, so thank you so much for doing that. Our next speaker is next Thursday. We have Robert Goldie coming from Towers Goldie, which is a Connecticut design firm with years of experience in very, very interesting projects. Tonight is a special night, and I probably say this now whenever we have an alumnus or two to feature. We've got two people tonight we're welcoming back, Cheryl Russ and Emily Forcier Guertin from the class of 2005. The format is going to be a surprise to me, I'm sure, since I have left it up to the two of them, and they will run this as they see fit. I'll tell you a little bit about both Cheryl and Emily. They were in the same class together, they lived together, they're friends, and they've both been in practice for the last 10 years, in very different practice. And the purpose of bringing alums here is really for students to hear that they sat in the seats where you sit today, and it's now 10 years later, or 9 years, or 7, or 12 years, and that they've been able to carve out careers that in some cases are exactly the careers that they wanted. And in some cases, it's totally different than what they expected to be doing, and they're happy. And it's important for you to see that, hear that, and get an opportunity to ask questions of them. Cheryl has worked for Glen Gate Company for 10 years. They're in Connecticut. They're a design build firm. And Cheryl is a senior project designer. She runs projects, works very closely with contractors and installers, and they're in her company. They do projects in New York and Connecticut, and Cheryl is also a friend of our program. We don't see her enough, but she's a real friend of our program because her company hires our students to serve as interns and as employees, and that's really important. So I'm like pressing her to say, oh, any of you who have these skills, contact me and we'll see what we can do.
They have openings.
They have openings. So that's Cheryl. I don't know if she's going to speak first or Emily. Emily also graduated in 2005. She's a licensed landscape architect in Vermont and Connecticut. And she joined a design firm, Gregory Lombardi Design. They have a Cambridge office. And she's worked for them for 4 years. She's in the process of helping establish a Connecticut firm now. So that's good to know because she'll need to hire someone soon. Their work is largely focused on residential projects throughout the region, but that is not the only work that they're doing, so they're expanding. Prior to joining Lombardi Design, she worked with Ann Penniman, who is also a Connecticut landscape architect who was here a few years ago, and she worked for LADA, which is also a Connecticut design planning firm that also was part of our lecture series a couple of times. The name of tonight was Divergent Paths and Common Themes, and it's an umbrella. It allows me to invite people who have similar skills when they leave, and it gives them an opportunity to talk about different things that they do and how they do them. So I would like you all to give a very warm welcome to our alums, Cheryl and Emily.
So thank you for having us, and what we're really going to focus on tonight is both of our paths, and at the end I think we're going to have more of a dialogue with you all. We expect that, or hope anyway, that you have some questions for us, so it may be a little bit more of an interaction than you would have otherwise with other speakers who do come in. But like Will said, we both graduated together with very similar skill sets and education. Certainly, as you all know, you can take different paths even within your own degree, but we left here with almost the same skill sets but have gone in slightly different directions. So that's what we want to sort of pass on to you, how we've got there, and where we plan on going, and give you some advice. And this is really more of a way to hear from you all as well, and just have, like I said, a dialogue.
And one more thing, I'm not sure if there's any concentration now on residential design, but I know when I went to school, we didn't really talk about it at all. So this will be kind of an introduction to everyone for residential projects from a design build side of things to an LA firm.
So here we are, pretty much, I don't know, 12 years ago.
Is that 12, was it?
Yeah. In a group of 20 people, I think there's a handful of us that are practicing landscape architecture. There's some of us who own and run design build firms, people who work for RIDOT, other state agencies, are gardeners, and any other facet. There's people who worked even for the Red Sox and the grounds crew are gardeners. So just an illustration that even though you may leave here with a landscape architecture degree, there's so many other disciplines or ways that you can practice. And just knowing that 10 years ago, that's what that group of people ended up as, I think is helpful for you. So I'm going to pass it over to Cheryl. She's going to talk first.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cheryl. As Will said, I graduated in the year 2005. Emily, you're throwing stuff at me. I did my internship at Glengate, which is the firm that I've worked at for the past 10 years. So for me, my path was very simple. I've stayed in one company, and that's where I've grown. So through my presentation, I'm going to show you things that I did when I first started, which are hand drawings, hand graphics. I mean, we didn't do any sort of CAD work when I first started out there. And then I'm going to go through the recession and kind of how I had to change things in order to thrive through that period of time, because a lot of things changed then. And then once the economy's ramped up again, going over some of the projects that we're working on now and some that we have completed. That's Glengate. So we're a design build firm, which is a really nice thing for clients because it gives them a single point of contact. So rather than having to organize the contractor, the designer, worry about the permit and all of those items, they come to us and we handle everything for them, from the design through permitting, through construction, as well as maintenance. A thing for design build firms is, since we have everything in-house, we're able to control timelines of projects, which is also a nice thing for clients. We also have good quality control on our items because, again, we are doing everything in-house and we're consistently monitoring things. When we do a construction project, I'm there once a week at a minimum, meeting with the client, the construction team, and going over all of the items that happened that week, as well as things that are upcoming. And then again, we have the flexibility of creating, or I would say more creative approaches to construction because we do have them in-house. So as we are designing, we have that construction counterpart telling us, no, don't do that. That's going to bring your cost up to here, or that's a great idea. So it's just, it's nice to have that person there with us as we're designing. Again, in Glengate, everybody's under one roof. We have our design team, our construction team, maintenance, for landscapes as well as for pool maintenance, which again is a nice thing because we have all those references under one roof. So if I have a question about design aspect, I have that person back at the office that can really let me know all of the mechanics that go into something. So in the beginning, when I was a youngster, actually I still am, okay? This here, I actually helped plant. I planted everything in here. When I first started at Glengate, I actually worked out in the field. I helped with installations, I helped with maintenance. I did the installation of pots, which kind of sounds a little silly, but for me it was a really good learning experience because I understood sequencing of jobs. I understood what the people that were installing the designs expected and what they needed. So for me, that summer was pretty intense because it was really hot, and I give those people a lot of credit, because you're working so hard out in the sun all day. But it was definitely a really good learning experience to understand my plants and you know, how well they do out in the field. This is an item called a pool set evaluation. When you first started Glengate, they urge you to do these items because it has a lot to do with the permitting aspect of things, understanding setbacks, coverage calculations, all things that are pertinent to siting your designs like pools and patios, because without knowing this, you can design something and it can't be built, and then you're kind of up a creek without a paddle. This is one of the first jobs that I worked on with a principal designer. When you first start, I just really did a lot of color renderings, hand graphics, a lot of presentation drawings. Let's see, here's another one. This one actually got built. But again, I was really responsible for doing the presentation boards. Back in the day, we would do boards rather than InDesign. This is a hand-drawn construction drawing. Again, back in the day. This was one of the last projects I worked on before the recession hit. This client wanted to basically make their backyard look like Disney World. We incorporated 2 large ponds. He wanted to be able to fish and canoe in this pond on his property, as well as a pool house with a pool. And for me, coming right out of school, I was really shocked by this, that people would want to spend this much money in their backyard and were able to do that. Again, that's a hand-drawn drawing of a planting plan. But here's a during construction photo where they're tearing out the lawn to accommodate the 2 large ponds, and some during photos of the framed out pool, as well as the hand planting of the plants in the lower area of the pond. And then a finished product showing the pool house, as well as the upper pond overlooking the pool. That tree that you can see right here drives me crazy. I begged and begged to have that removed, and they wouldn't do it. Then the recession hit. When the recession hit, we had layoffs. My boss was laid off. The senior project designer that I worked for was laid off. We really didn't have much demand for the larger projects that we had been working on. I was actually transitioned into our property care division, where I actually had 27 clients that I dealt with on a daily basis for maintenance needs, which was, again, a really good learning, a learning thing for me, because I got to really talk with clients every day, and get comfortable with working with them, as well as understanding the maintenance needs of designs that we've installed, which is hugely important when you design something, thinking about the maintenance aspect of things. So I'm just going to show you a couple of clients. And this client, this is a client that I had a really good relationship with. We did a lot of enhancements around our property. In 2004 is when this project was built. Emily actually helped as an intern, right, on this one. So as our property manager, I would help coordinate all the maintenance items, as well as recommend things to her, such as the furniture, smaller enhancements, enhancements to her existing plantings. And this is a beach entry, which I think is pretty cool. One thing to also keep in mind, the material that they chose for this design is a buckskin material, and being aware of the maintenance aspects of things in the future is really important, because this material is really porous, and so over time it would start to get black, and you couldn't really power wash it because it was so soft. So really understanding the longevity of the product selection is key for design. And also thinking about what a space looks like at night. And during the recession, we actually started going into people's houses and started doing decor inside people's houses. This is a smaller project. And during the recession, we were seeing more of these smaller plantings for clients rather than these full master plans that we were used to in the past. I mean, before the recession, people would just kind of throw money at you and let you do whatever you wanted. And then as the recession hit, people obviously were a lot tighter with things and wanted to really just enhance what they already had. So in this case, this was a past client, and she downsized during the recession and asked us to do this wetland planting, which involved a pretty extensive wetland permit. And because in each town they have different processes, permitting is just intense. All right. So as the economy came back, I then went back into our design, to designing the larger projects, which is personally what I like to do. This is a before picture. This client was really interested in making this courtyard an area where they could have a small dipping pool and just lounge out there in the morning and have their cup of coffee. But they were really wanted to make sure that what we designed went with the architecture of the home. So this was a concept that we put together, just a small dipping pool with the rills that they could view from the home. This project involved an intense wetlands permit, very intense. We had a 30-page application fee, or application for the permit, as well as having to do a significant amount of drawings in order to get through this process, which took about 3 months in order just to get that pool approved in that location. And this is our pool construction drawing. Since we're a design build firm, a lot of our construction items are a standard, so we don't have to do a lot of detailed drawings, such as wall footing details or patio details. It's really more of just designing details, showing how deep we want the pool and the location of the pool for within our spaces. Again, being with a design build firm is a very interactive process. You can see here, one of my coworkers is out in the field placing little cardboard pieces to kind of figure out where we want to put those rills to go into the pool. And then after that was decided, we were able to kind of cut those areas in there. Here's the finished space. Again, one of the really important things was to make sure that this looked like it was always there. And so with the masonry, we were out there every week just making sure that this wall that we constructed meshed seamlessly with this wall here. And again, something that we tend to do is we outfit the spaces with decor and furniture. We make recommendations to the client. And once a project's complete, we typically pass it on to our property care division, which is really nice because then we can make sure that it's maintained the way that we want it to be maintained. This client wanted a state-of-the-art pool. He bought this property because of its views, and this was actually a past client who moved to this site, and he was really adamant about having this show-stopping pool. So here's a picture of the formed pool. You can see that the walls that we built were actually pretty tall. I think this guy's on a ladder, and he's probably about 6 feet tall, so pretty big wall. Finished space. These rocks here were lifted in with a crane, and once they were placed on the beam, we were looking at them, and this rock right here wasn't as flat as we liked it to be. So we had a mason go out there and hand chisel this rock for 3 or 4 hours just to get this little bump out of the rock that we didn't like. And again, that's something that I like about a design build firm. We're out there all the time, so we can make those little tweaks in the field, and you can be a complete control freak, which is one of my favorite things. Just another photo. This is a smaller project. It's a renovation. This pool is an older pool, and it was located further back on the property. They just wanted to give it a little bit of a facelift. This is a sketch that we did showing them what we were proposing, basically to change the concrete patio to a granite patio, and then have a little seating area at the end as a focal point and a gathering area since it is so far away from the house. And then that's the end product. Okay, this is a little interesting of a project. Around this time, we got a new head of construction, and his background is actually in custom home building. And we met with this client, and we did an exterior concept plan for her, which included lavish gardens. And then she asked us if we could look at her kitchen because she wanted to make the kitchen she wanted her kitchen to focus on the outdoors. So she wanted to bring the outdoors in. So we worked with her with some sketches and some rough concepts, and from there developed it a little bit further with a custom cabinetry maker, a model designer, and then came up with this. It was definitely a very interesting process because I've never done a kitchen. It was a huge learning experience. I learned a lot of things not to do. The client was very happy at the end. But again, this window right here it's just looking out onto these gardens because she's in the kitchen more than she's outside, and she's like, I just want to be one with the outdoors. So it was definitely interesting. This is a project that we're working on right now. It's it looks like a hand drawing, but actually what we do is once we work the conceptuals out on trash paper, we do the actual drawing in CAD, grayscale it out, and then we do hand graphics on top of it. Because it seems, for us, we feel like it's a little bit more romantic than having the AutoCAD drawings. We have upped our game. We do AutoCAD construction drawings. This is a night lighting plan. This is a planting plan, and then this is a layout plan. But again, you won't see any of our construction like detailing, such as like the patios and stairs, because again, that's a standard that we have. Also, I will say, I rely on the young people that come into our office because I'm not very good at AutoCAD. So I love people like you who do this stuff very quickly because it takes me a lot longer to do this, so it saves me a lot of time. And pool construction drawing. This is during the pool dig, and then this is the shell of the pool. It kind of looks like a boat bottom. We have to make it substantial enough because it isn't in virgin grade, so we had to upgrade all of the rebar in the pool in order to hold in the water. And this is a veneer on the wall. There's going to be a waterfall that actually comes out of this pool and leads into this basin, and pretty much right where this is the main dining room, so it overlooks this pool. And I don't have any more pictures of that one because it started snowing a lot. And then this is the last one, so I'll stop boring you guys. But this was a past client who bought 2 properties next to each other, and when we were introduced to the project, all that was there was this house being built. So we were actually able to do a plan for the entire site. So first what we did, based on the setbacks and the property requirements, we put together 3 rough concepts on trash. So this is on trash paper. So we have one where we have a pool over here, and then a new guest house and indoor pool on this side. This is if they were to combine the 2 properties. We put the pool in the center of the 2 properties, but after doing extensive research at the town, we found that that wouldn't be feasible with the town requirements for coverage calculations. And then this is the third one, which is pretty much what they went with. The pool closer to the new proposed guest house, and the main entrance, the main driveway entrance to the front, and then a grass lane over to the pool/guest house. Here's an example of a planting plan. We divided it up to between the 2 properties, just so it would be a little less overwhelming for the guys out in the field to see what's going on. This is an example of just, it's kind of hard to see, but a fence layout and the different types of styles that we're looking for in the different areas. This is an example of an in-house takeoff plan. This is what we use in order to put together our estimates for a project. Because as a designer at a design build firm, I'm responsible for doing the design, the permitting, the estimating, the contracts, selling my design to the client, and then following through with everything. And just some install photos for you. We actually are building this guest house in-house, which is fun because we get some say on the pool room in there. we handpicked this stone right here, and we made them install it so it looks like it was coming out of the ground. And then we chose this tile, and we're doing all of this as well. Here's a picture of the outside. And then this is the guest house again. It's still in construction, but we're almost there. The client actually took this picture because she's so happy with how things are going. And then I'll give it to Emily. Here you go, dear.
Okay. So, I don't know any of your all backgrounds and why you've decided to go into landscape architecture, but I'm going to tell you why I did, and that might help you see my path and where the firms I've worked for and why. I graduated high school knowing that I wanted to be a landscape architect. I actually applied to college knowing that I wanted to be a landscape architect. And the reason why I knew I did is because I have really strong interests in art, in botany, in ecology, and I happen to have the really good fortune of some really good teachers and just adults in my life when I was in high school too, that sort of guided me into that path. So I married all those elements together, and it's not just those elements, it was really about the interaction of humans with those aspects. So just as a little bit of background, thought that might be interesting to some of you. So as Will has already said, I graduated 10 years ago. I'm a licensed landscape architect, and I worked for 3 quite different landscape architecture firms with quite different focuses. So I'll go through those. The first is LADA. They're in Simsbury, Connecticut. It's a suburban town outside of Hartford. It's a land planning firm. So what that means is it's largely landscape architects and planners. And we would look at projects from the very beginning. And what I mean by that is often a lot of our clients were developers. So before they even purchased a property, we would do feasibility studies and find out, okay, is this property that you're considering buying, is it usable for what you want to do? There was all sorts of aspects needed with that, but it was sort of interesting to think it's not always I have this land, I want to do this with it. It's what can I do with it, or is this property even worth purchasing? And we were able to do that not just because we had planners and landscape architects. We were also a multidisciplinary firm. There was an engineer on staff, but we worked closely with a team, generally surveyors, engineers, and developers or architects to work on all those sorts of projects. We worked on a lot of corporate and public projects, bigger scale projects, and it was a medium-sized firm. I would say about 10 people. This is an example of a campus design, Central Connecticut State University. It's in New Britain, Connecticut. It's an existing campus. This was not a new campus design. There was this bottom left-hand photo. That was a street. And in a redesign for many things, including utilities, this design here brought back in a walkable urban core. And it was more than just putting utilities undergrade and getting rid of a street so the campus could be whole. There was other design elements, including integrating a fountain and seating area. Of course, this is probably similar to what you consider the quad at URI, which didn't exist on this campus. So it just gives you an idea of, like I said, the type of project. You can see that it was a large-scale project, but there's some significant details in here. So we weren't just involved in master planning, we also got into doing construction documentation with this project. This is an example, same firm, where it was a retail establishment or a retail design. This was a project that was started out as a feasibility study. It was a vacant farmland, and it was for sale, and developers thought that given that it was in a suburban area, about 30 minutes from the biggest urban core, introducing a retail plaza, which was very popular in the 90s and early 2000s, where this is more of a Main Street concept. And I know they're everywhere. There's one up the street here too, I think. But again, this is something where we did master planning down to detailing, as well as construction administration. There was, in a project this size, you don't figure everything out in your construction documents. The sketch plans or LSKs that are done concurrently during construction is more documentation than your actual construction document. So that, when I worked for this firm, that's what they were doing. I got to see it in process of being built and understanding that what construction means. The next firm I worked at, I would say I probably worked at LADA for 3 years, and I moved on to Ann Penniman Associates, and this is a firm. It's much smaller. There were 3 of us, actually. We worked on mostly residential and public spaces, and the projects were significantly smaller. They weren't campus plans or master plans for large developments. One thing I'll say with this firm that I really liked and what drew me to it was there was a strong emphasis on ecology and restoration and preservation. And I don't mean that in the sense that we restored woodlands and wetlands. It was integrated with built spaces. This is where I really took an interest that I had, such as plants and ecology, and decided or had the ability to really run with it and build my skill set. So when a project like this, which is residential, there was a lot of things going on. It's not evident from this plan, but the building, this is actually in Westerly. This building was much closer to the shoreline, which is here. And it was picked up and rotated to meet the current standards, which wasn't required, but this client was really interested in doing that. And you can obviously see that's the ocean out there. It doesn't look like your standard landscape, and that's because almost every single plant is native, but it's still a relatively modern space. So really being under the guise of a firm who understands how to take the concept of using native plants and integrate it in a design like this was definitely interesting. And the client was interested in it too, certainly because they had this site, but we really sold them on it. And I think that's very powerful. It's not just a design tool, but just to sell concept to someone. So as a residential project, this is a good example here for Ann Penniman's office. I was also started my project management skills pretty heavily when I worked for Ann Penniman. I should say that all of the firms I worked for, every single project and just how the firms are structured, it's all team-based. You don't just get assigned a task and you run off to it and you show up and that's the finished project. So where you think you may not have the best ideas or have the strongest points, people work collaboratively, and I mean that both internally in an office, but externally with architects or engineers, to be able to come up with a design that the client is happy with and that you are also happy with. So this project is actually an assisted living retirement facility, and in the early 2000s, this was before the recession, when there was still a big housing boom, they decided to build these standalone housing units. And in doing so, they actually hired the landscape architect last. And they got about 15% into construction and realized that this project wasn't going to fit in with the rest of the complex, which is also a property which has a little bit of a golf course, but around the golf course, it's native planting. This is a meadow planting, basically. So we came in, we dealt with grading issues, which is we added these retaining walls in. We dealt with some drainage issues and blended in what was left from the landscape. You can see these existing trees, and then on the other side of the street there was these existing trees. So in effort to try to blend in this into the existing landscape is where we were after. And just to give you a perspective, this building here is right about here. So this and here is the native plants here. Now, I would say that we didn't have to struggle with clients to sell the native concept, or we didn't turn down necessarily work because we got halfway through and someone said we didn't want to do this. It's not all of our projects were 100% native plants, but I think that what I'm trying to show with these examples of projects is you don't have to work on a park to do that. And it's still pretty. There's still street trees. There's still perennial planting bed. Honestly, most people that don't know anything about plants, they see pretty and flowers. So it doesn't really matter to them. This is another public space that I worked on with Ann Penniman's office. This is Elizabeth Park, which is in Hartford, Connecticut, is actually the oldest municipally owned rose garden in the country. And we had the good fortune of working with a foundation who was funded this project and were the clients. So it was also interesting because Elizabeth Park is actually a municipal park, but it's owned by 2 cities. So we had to get approvals not from our client, just our client, but from 2 municipalities. So this is just, these photos are just a snippet of the project, but Prospect Avenue is a big thoroughfare in Hartford. It's actually the city line, and this is just a new entrance, Arbor Way. We also, along this entryway, did a rain garden, which is seen here. And then there was a gathering point of where there had been several paths that had just sort of become derelict. They were just mostly asphalt paths, and there is a building just beyond this space, and it was just 5 different paths that just met in the middle with no real reason or rhyme. So as a public space, while it's a small master plan, it is a way to show how you can still work in a big scale, but then end up having small areas. So after working for Ann for 4 years, I decided to really challenge myself, and it's not that I wasn't being challenged there. I was looking for something different, And I had been living and working in Connecticut for about 6 years, and I decided that while I was lucky enough to not lose my job during the recession, I wanted to do something different. So I decided looking into anywhere and everywhere that was hiring, and I decided to move to Boston. So in doing so, I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to work for a bigger firm, who I still work for, and so that's Gregory Lombardi Design, and we're a landscape architecture firm. We specialize mostly in residential design, however, that we do a lot of public spaces as well, and we work all different size projects, small to large, and we're a large size firm. We have over 20 landscape architects working with us. Now, I would say that all of our designs are very, very detail oriented, and we start from concept. We work with a client to get an approved design. Sometimes we get it right off. Sometimes it's several versions. This is only a portion of one project, but everything that you see in this photo was created and designed. And it was a project that I think is representative of what we do. That it looks like it's been there. It doesn't look like it's new. And I would say that that is something that we strive for. You will find that in a repeating theme in most of the projects I'm going to show you, that they're well thought out and detailed, and not that any of the other firms that I work for projects weren't. This is just to a different level. Whereas when you're working on a bigger project, you can get detailed into paving patterns and things like that, but often budgets or just scope doesn't allow you to really get into the minutia of things. This, I would say, is probably a project that is quasi-public and quasi-private. It is privately owned. It's a horse farm, but it is used by people other than the owners. The client rides horses, her children do too, competitively, and they've opened up their stables to competitions and to friends alike. And this was a very interesting project to work on because I've never worked on an equestrian farm, but the details that were on the inside were the same on the outside. Everything what we strive to do is wherever the landscape touches the buildings, we work directly with the architect, and we talk to them about our details and make sure that they work. For instance, there's this fountain here. It's integral with the overhang of the structure, and it's the same fountain here, there's a walkway here. So this design was thought of ahead of time, but also we were on site 2 to 3 times a week because of how integral things were, to make sure things were working and could be built the way we had designed, but also into reality. So that's one aspect that I think that you don't always talk about in school, is you can design something and it's awesome and you're happy with it. Well, the reality of the built world can be different, and be able to think on the fly, work with the contractors, work with the architects and all those parties involved is as valuable as a good design. This is an example of an small urban design. This is in Boston, and the top image shows you that there's the busy street on the outside, but there's a very quiet and calm courtyard on the inside. And this is the garden that's actually street view, and this is just a detail of the fountain on the inside. Everything in here, again, custom. These planters were not readily made. It's a fountain that we designed. Same thing with all of the woodwork. I think this is a good example of showing how collaborative efforts make the design of the entire site really interesting and whole. You almost don't even see on this image where the landscape and the building starts and ends. This happens to be a motor court. I think it's a good image, and it shows some really strong correlations between the site and the landscape. This is a project, and you'll see, if not in the next project, but a following project, with different styles. I think you've probably seen that already, but this is a Georgian house in Metro Boston area. So you're going to see some very classical elements, and I think that's one interesting aspect, whether it's a campus design or residential design. Not every single one is going to be the same style, and even if you're not working on those projects in your firm, I would say take advantage of just seeing what everyone else is up to, because while this style might not be your favorite, you can learn from it. And I think that's important. So here's the modern design, completely different. But you can see here, look, all the native plants. The ocean is right across the street. There was big regulations on this, big. The pool, the client wanted a pool. It's shimmied in the back. So there's a lot going on in this little site. So again, just looking at a series of photos, these are all projects from Gregory Lombardi Design. Every single one of these are custom elements, from ironwork to finials, small details within ironwork, paving patterns, you name it. We really get into that. And I would say, I remember when I was in school here, we were going through an accreditation process, and the people who were here doing that said, what do you think you're going to do? What are you interested in? And I specifically remember saying that I wanted to work somewhere where we could focus in on details. But I would say that if I had gone to work for a firm like this in the beginning, I'm not sure I would have even been able to focus just to get the fog of trying to learn everything. So I'm glad that I had the other experiences I had and be able to work on larger scale projects first and then hone into something smaller. So now that you've seen all these great images, so what? How did we do it? What does all this mean? Like you can flip through a magazine and say it's pretty, but I think it's important to understand how we got there and what tools we use. Because 90% of what landscape architecture is communication. So what we do, and I'm not just talking about plans, you need to be able to talk, to be able to email, to write. There's so many different forms, but you have to be able to use those tools appropriately. Otherwise, you may have the best design in the world, but it will never come to fruition if you don't use those tools. So I'm going to run through this project very quickly. As a resident in Connecticut, it is 80% through construction now. Essentially, it's about a 4-acre site. The shoreline is down here. This is an example of one of the schematic designs that we presented the client, and based on the house design changing and all sorts of other elements, the design changed. But what we do is we start with hand graphics in the beginning. More of what Cheryl was saying. It has more of a contextual artistry approach that clients can perceive. And then once a client okays the design, we move quickly into design development. And sometimes we get into doing this sort of in-depth drawings in that design. What I'm going to do is focus in on just this grotto wall for this project. But again, it's showing that while we're working at design, we zoom in and just a different level of graphics and detail and design. And as we try to update the design and work with clients' preferences, we continue to keep that same level of detail to be able to express to the client, and also to figure out the design internally. We work on this level. And here's a SketchUp model. I'm sure you're all glad to see SketchUp in here. We use SketchUp as a tool. Not every project SketchUp model is as exciting as others. Sometimes we use it as design development and the client never sees it. Right now I'm working on a pool project which has two sides of the pool that isn't going to be an infinity edge, and to be able to understand how the water is going to spill over, we're going to do 3D models that, and we may never show anyone outside the office. This did go to the client, also went to the architect, but again, it doesn't need to be an extravagant model to get the point across. This is just an example of a graphic that we use for a planting plan. You can see that the design has developed all along. It's also a good way, not just to work out the design, but be able to communicate to the client how far the design's gotten, how much do you know about the space, and the level of detail that it's going to be developed to. I included this as an example of this size project, which I didn't show you the entire site. Every single one of those lines represents a drawing. I believe it's about 60 pages. I would say that's pretty typical for this scale project for the firm that I work for. And that includes everything from details to layout to grading, overall plans, etc. We do full construction drawings. This is just, again, a zoom in of that grotto area. And we also, during the construction drawing process, we work with the client to have the project competitively bid. We translate what those numbers mean to clients so they can understand it. And then we go into construction administration. And usually what that means is a 1 or 2 week in-field visit. And that is not just to make sure that the design is being built the way we want, just to make sure things are working together, that we can again communicate with the contractor, make sure the wall style is what we want, that everything's working together. And inherently there's going to be questions. There's going to be also mistakes in drawings, and you can't figure out everything on a sheet of paper. So it's very, very important to be involved in this aspect. And I would say that if in your early careers you're able to get out on site, even if it means like asking permission to go, you can learn so much by literally just tagging along. And I actually had all 3 firms from the beginning. I was able to do that. Even as a baby landscape architect, week 1 of my first internship, I went out on field. I knew nothing, literally nothing, but it was very informative to be part of that. And like I said, it's only about 80% completion, but this shows the space a little bit more completed. And about a month ago, I did a lighting walkthrough, and this is just a photo from that. So just wanted to share that one with you. So that is Cheryl and I 10 years ago. Cheryl, you want to come back up? I think we just want to take this opportunity to reflect on lessons learned, advice that we would have for you, but advice that we wish we could have told ourselves 10 years ago. Would you like to go first?
Sure. I have learned the most from my mistakes. You're going to make them. It's going to happen. Don't think you're perfect, because you're not. But you learn so much from your mistakes. I can't stress that enough. You make one mistake, you're never going to make it again. So that's one thing.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing. I would say to challenge yourself. Know what your strengths are and develop them, but don't shy away from things because you don't know them. I think that you're going to put yourself into a smaller selection of opportunities in your future. Say nothing about your immediate future, but your long-term future if you're afraid to do something. Challenge yourself. You could know nothing about SketchUp. You could know nothing about AutoCAD, but don't be afraid to not take a job or apply for a job because they tell you need to be proficient. I can tell you right now that people even in 10 years of experience are not proficient. All the programs and all the tools, all that we use, they're just that. And you know, some firms are going to say they want Rhino, some say they're going to want SketchUp. It honestly doesn't matter. You can learn them. And if you want an opportunity and you're interested in something, if you put that energy into it, you will go far. And that, I think, is one of the biggest things. And it's just like Cheryl said, if you're afraid of making mistakes, guess what? You'll never make them because you'll never push yourself. And I think that those things, while they're different, they go hand in hand. And I would say to all of you that, you know, you have to start somewhere. And if you, while you're trying to get to that path now, today, have questions based on our experiences or thoughts you've had while you're thinking about your future and how you want to start to apply or whom you want to work for, or just any projects that you've seen that we've gone through, questions, please feel free. We're opening up the dialogue to you.
Any questions?
I got a quick question for both of you.
Sure.
So for Cheryl, for starters, what type of work are you doing during the winter since it's a design build? I'm assuming a lot of the maintenance people get probably laid off. Or,
During the wintertime, we do a lot of design and permitting to get ready for the springtime. I mean, right now I'm working on 3 permits. And in addition to that, 2 large-scale designs. So that's one thing that we focus on. This year, with the snow, obviously we're not doing a lot of construction right now, but there are winters where we can do construction throughout the entire winter.
and then it's Emily, correct?
Yes.
So that image that you showed with the shopping plaza that you the design concept is Main Street, you said.
Mm-hmm.
Could you just talk in bullet points about your process when you stepped onto the farm or the field and how you got from point A to point Z?
So I can speak generically to that because I didn't work for the firm when they had started the project, but I know that it was a developer who was looking into it. So what we would do is a feasibility study first. So what that means is contacting regulatory agencies, be it a town or state, depending on what was on site. It would have been both in that case because there was wetlands, and the state of Connecticut regulates all wetlands and it's not town-based. So we look at what activities are permitted, what the setbacks are, and that informs your buildable space. And depending on what the realtor or the client is after, their program would be, you know, I want to have 200,000 square feet of retail space. Can it fit? And not just can the building fit, can the parking fit? So for that space, how many parking spaces do you need? So we do that sort of just general basically block design, you know. So we would have done that first in a very graphic, almost hand drawing, literally hand drawing. We may or may not have had a survey at that time. We could have done that without a survey, just a plot plan and knowing where the water courses are. Also, a lot of municipalities have GIS and other formats that you can get a basic understanding of a site. So that's how we would have started. And from there, it would be mostly about what the use was. So with this project, the Main Street was internal. So you probably saw on that plan, on the bottom of the plan was actually the road. So, you would get into just schematic design and building from there. I'm not sure if that wholly answers your question.
Yeah, that does. So you guys do like perspectives and cross sections or anything like that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I honestly, I worked there a long time ago. I don't have every single drawing from that aspect, but we did full construction drawings. That was just a snippet, more of a overview.
So it's deeper than just like the conceptual.
Oh, absolutely. Every single firm that I worked for. Certainly, there are clients that you would just do a schematic design. They decide not to move further. But I would say 90% of the projects, we started with concept design and went through with full construction drawings, and then into construction administration as well, with on-site supervision.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
Emily, what kind of firm is your preference?
That's a tough one. I also think that some of the dynamics of a firm maybe not. I think you need to find a place that you're comfortable in, and I mean that both in terms of what the activity that you're doing, the type of projects you're working, but the environment. I would say that I enjoyed working for all three. I would say that if I had to pick a favorite out of all three right now, it would probably be Gregory Lombardi Design. It's a larger firm. There's a lot of different people with different backgrounds and strong interests, and that really makes some of our projects greater. When you're sitting in a room of 20 people, if Cheryl and I are both in that room, Cheryl and I might not be working on a project. She might not even be talking to me. But if she's talking about a detail or something, and I know something about it, we're a very open firm and collaborative. And I will just say, hey guys, you should really think about this, and that's helpful. And I think just knowing that, finding your voice in that dialogue and working in an environment that incubates that has been really great. And I really do enjoy getting down to the details. And honestly, every day is not about the details. My day-to-day is not detailing. My day-to-day is project management, being the point of contact, the person who gets all the phone calls about all the problems, dealing with, not just the design, but managing the fees, understanding what the construction fees are going to be, dividing up the work for junior staff. It's more beyond that. And I would say that the longer you work, the more exposure you're going to get, your strengths are going to grow, and your experiences are going to be different. So it's multifaceted. It's really hard to answer that question, but I would say, at 10 years you start to hit a stride, and I think you'll begin to know, and I really do enjoy working there.
I have a question. So you're both out for 10 years. Are there community service, landscape architecture activities that you engage in?
Currently, no. I'm a member of ASLA, but I'm not involved in the community, as it were. I do actively go to a lot of lectures and presentations and try to keep up with those things, not just because I need the credit for licensure, but because I'm interested in them. And I think that's what sometimes you're forced to go to things like this because someone's telling you have to or you need for credit. But if you look at it from the other perspective, like I want to go because I need to go to a lecture, I want to go because this is interesting to me, it's going to change your outlook. So it's not a direct give back or feedback, but I think showing up for a lecture also supports the community. I'm looking at being involved in a zoning capacity for the city of Hartford, but not yet. I know, well, but you do a lot of mentoring, right, Cheryl? Don't you?
What? I do?
At Glengate with interns, I think that's a way to give back, and it's not directly outside your firm, but.
Yeah, I mean, our firm does a lot of work for our clients. A lot of our clients do volunteer work, and then they ask us to kind of give back. And so through our clients, we do a lot of volunteer work for different organizations. But on my own, I really don't have a whole lot of time outside of work because I am a workaholic. I work a lot.
How many hours a day do you both work normally?
In the summer, it's significantly different than in the wintertime. In the summer, I'd say 10 to 12 hours.
Yeah, I would say this summer I average about 60 hours each week, and in the winter it's probably closer to 40. But I would say that the longer that I've worked, the more hours I put in, and I think that goes hand in hand with more responsibility. So.
Absolutely.
Well, if there are no other questions, you can come up and ask anything to Emily and Cheryl if you like. I'd like to say thank you very much for coming.
Welcome. Thank you.